A mysterious man wanders through the woods, killing everyone who crosses his path. Sound cool? Because I'm here to talk about In a Violent Nature from 2024. So, I've wanted to see this movie ever since I saw the trailer a few months ago. And I didn't really know anything about it because, I've been avoiding reviews and stuff like that. But after learning a few things about it over the last few days, I've been really itching to see this thing. And though I've been avoiding reviews, it does seem like the majority of people seem to have not really enjoyed this movie, at least from what I've seen. And honestly, I think that learning a few small details about this helped me enjoy it a little bit easier, I think you could say. I mean, I totally get how it's easy to have, like certain preset expectations. It's just like the way humans do things. I have actually been working on just kind of like turning off my brain and just letting something envelop me and just unfold in front of me. But it's admittedly really hard to do. I think a lot of people wanted a typical slasher film with all the, kind of tried and true slasher tropes. Kind of like how most people wanted another Halloween 1 and 2 again instead of Season of the Witch and Halloween Ends. Anyways, In a Violent Nature was directed by Chris Nash, a filmmaker who started directing shorts back in 2005. And this was actually his feature-length debut. As far as the cast goes, I didn't recognize anybody. We have Andrea Pavlovic, Cameron Love, and Rye Barrett as our villain here. I don't know what the budget was here, but I guess it was pretty low. I mean, like, if it were more than a few million, I'd be really surprised. And it looks like it has made back about 2.2 million so far. So, the film starts out with a group of people camping out in the woods where one of them finds a locket, like attached to a necklace. And this seems to trigger something, causing a kind of like a zombie-looking man to crawl up out of the ground, and he seems to need to find this locket. It seems to mean something to him. And this is absolutely a slasher film, and it both plays on slasher film tropes and kind of also does its own thing completely, which is a really cool mix of ideas. And as I kind of alluded to, this is a bit experimental as a slasher, and that's something I really would actually like to see more of. I mean, I love a meat and potatoes slasher as much as anybody, but I also appreciate seeing something new. So the tropes you will see here are things like the look of our villain. He does things exactly the way of someone like Jason Voorhees, which he is getting many comparisons to, you might have noticed. He's got a simple backstory, which leads to him wanting to murder anyone in his path. He even kind of looks like Jason, quite a bit actually. He's got a cool mask that he finds and wears, and he's got an assortment of weapons that he uses, like an axe and these like meat hook things that are attached to a chain. Aesthetically, I think he looks cool. As I said, quite Jason-esque, but instead of a hockey mask, he wears this old firefighter mask thing that I've never seen before, but I like the look of it. Some people don't, I guess. It almost looks like a miner's helmet, which also makes me think of the dude from My Bloody Valentine. And how does he get around in the woods? Like we always assumed Jason did. He walks. But instead of cutting out the parts where this mysterious dude, named Johnny, by the way, walks through the woods, we get to see it all. And that is really the unique aspect of this film, because we don't really need to see this monotony. We see it in like a third-person view most of the time, with a camera following Johnny kind of behind over the shoulder, sort of, but we occasionally get to see his face. The cinematography here is great, in my opinion, and the film looks great. The unorthodox shots make it enjoyable since you never really see them coming, and the camera angles are often not what you are expecting. And it's these camera angles and distanced shots that are, part of what keeps it interesting, for me at least, as to where a lot of people seem to find this film boring. Another unique aspect of this is that there's no score. There is some music in the film, but like 90% of the time, where there would be a musical score, there's just nothing but silence. As Johnny's kind of trudging through the woods, you just hear like ambient nature sounds. I think it's really cool. Some people think it's kind of relaxing in an odd way. I agree. I found myself at times, I don't want to say almost falling asleep, but almost like just getting so comfortable to the point where I was almost zoning out. And this is not going to work for everyone, but it's in this context, I think it's super experimental. I think it works personally. I think it's cool. The runtime here is a super tight 90 minutes, and honestly, I found it to be almost too short, so I didn't find it boring at all. I can see walking into this almost completely blind, knowing only that it's a slasher film, might make you feel like it's a boring watch. I totally get it. You have to be a little bit patient and a bit open minded to enjoy this film, I think. Another slasher film trope here is the kills. You know what I mean. Slasher villain roams around picking people off one by one. And that is also here, completely. The first kill scene here is even done off camera, another slasher film trope. One that harkens back to the glory days of the 1980s, since censorship was nipping at the heels of artists. A lot of slasher films of the time had to have some of the kill scenes edited to be off screen because of strict censorship. But it kind of had me wondering if this film would be on the tame side. Well, I'm happy to report that it totally isn't. Quite the opposite, really. The kill scenes, they aren't spaced too far apart, and they are brutal. I'm not going to spoil them for you, but I will say that each one of them is like a slasher fan's dream. If you like stuff like Terrifier, these kills will have you smiling. I'll just say that much. There is one in particular that may as well been wrapped up with a nice bow on it for us gore fans. I'll just leave it at that. You'll know it when you see it. Oh, and they are all really well done with practical effects. They look really good. And you've probably noticed by now that I seem to have little to no interest in the other characters besides Johnny. And that's because they're all terrible. The acting was mostly bad, the dialogue was mostly pointless, and there wasn't really too much there to latch on to. I kind of wondered, at the time even, maybe that was another slasher film trope. Bad characters with bad dialogue. I think it very well could have been completely intentional. There was a character who seemed to know who Johnny was, but he wasn't, really fleshed out or anything. The older woman near the end probably had the best dialogue of the film, and she delivered it competently, so there's that, I guess. Oh, and there was kind of a final girl, too. She didn't have, really all that much to do or say, but she kind of slides into that final girl trope, and I thought that was really cool. Again, this film is fairly clever, so I kind of feel like everything was intentional, even if it might not seem that way. I almost forgot to mention that the director was influenced by Gus Van Sant's Walking trilogy, which I haven't seen, but that does add a lot of uniqueness to this film, even though it's not going to be for everyone. I'm giving In a Violent Nature a 7 out of 10. I'd recommend it to all horror fans, especially slasher fans, but I think it takes an open mind to appreciate this. That said, I love the experimentation here. While not perfect, it was a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. Now I can't help but think, are we getting a sequel? Cheers, guys.